Oh, we're live. Yeah. Okay. Etapu, namaste, runefer. This is Kasakma Keparu with a mouthful of food coming at you again. And today we have a special treat for you. We have an interview with Lynette Ramos of Quantum Healing Hypnosis, also known as QHHT. I'm going to talk to her, pick her brain about what quantum healing and hypnosis is exactly. But before I do that, make sure you hit the like button. All right, and share this video with family and friends because we want to get this revolution started. So many of you know that I am a big proponent of hypnosis for healing, for therapy. Now, there are some individuals that you'll see, especially in California, Vegas, that do stage hypnosis. That's very, very different from therapeutic hypnosis because we're actually trying to help heal people by going into the deep recesses of the subconscious mind. And that's where the healing, as we see it, can begin. Versus stage hypnosis, they do things like make you believe you're a dog or cat, things like that, and it's purely for entertainment purposes. But therapeutic hypnosis is what I focus on. And if you are a Patreon supporter of mine, you'll know that we bi-weekly have group hypnosis sessions. And if you're not a Patreon supporter, please think about becoming one today. You can do so for as little as $1 or $20 per month. And you'll get exclusive access to instructional videos that will take your knowledge of spirituality to the next level. And it's purely meant to be like a library, like the Library of Alexandria, where we're giving all the spiritual knowledge and wisdom that you can refer to. So, as I said, the group hypnosis sessions are bi-weekly, but let me not stop talking and finish off this food. And I want to bring Lynette on, but before I do that, when I started studying hypnosis, I became fascinated by quantum healing hypnosis, which is made popular by Dolores Cannon. And they did some extremely interesting things with it. And I think I talked a little bit about this in the broadcast we tried to do before, where they would take people into the future and take people into the past, and they would relay information. And it was just incredible. So let's hear from Lynette Ramos herself. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So let's talk a little bit about, first off, what is quantum healing hypnosis, also known as QHHT?
It's a hypnosis technique that can alter your state of consciousness, can be used for past life regression, connecting with other energies, ancestors, angels, people that have passed. And it's basically a technique that's used to look at what the source of someone's blocks are, where their traumas are, and it's basically whether it's this existence or another, we're looking at what the root cause is. And so that's what I like, because it gets to the core of what our situations are or our challenges.
Awesome. And this was created by Dolores Cannon, right? Can you speak a little bit about her?
Yes. So Dolores Cannon started off by being an assistant to her husband, who used hypnosis for standard things like weight loss, relaxation, very basic things. And her husband eventually left his career with hypnosis, and she actually stepped in. And she noticed that with working with a specific woman, that this woman, her voice changed, and she started speaking of a situation that she knew was not from current day, because she was expressing a different personality and a different experience. And so that piqued her interest. And so she wasn't trying to do that. So she started exploring more to understand, why did this, past memory, why did it come? And how can we do this with more intention?
Wow, that's very interesting. Now there are many schools of thought on hypnosis. Now, when I studied hypnosis, I primarily studied Milton Erickson. I'm pretty sure people are familiar with that. And then there, of course, there's those who are following Dolores Cannon. Now, you touched on something interesting, which is getting to the root of the cause. And this is something I talk about a lot, how, Western society, we tend to not get to the heart of the matter when we're trying to do healing. And it's all topical. It's all just surface level. And what I like about hypnosis is that it really gets into the subconscious mind where the root of a lot of things are seated. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in my work, I find that it varies. You know, sometimes past life is important, and so we go there. Other times people go to a point in their childhood. So it really depends. And what we feel in our work is we're connecting with a person's higher self or your inner wisdom, the part of you that has the macro view. So we believe in our modality is that we're working with that part of you, and that part of you is going to help us to connect with what the challenge is or what specifically we should be working on in the present moment. And so sometimes, like I said, it's a past life thing. So we're basically we're trying to uncover where these patterns are. What was the trigger of a specific pattern, whether it's a belief, whether it's a behavior, whether it's a fear. We're looking at what the source is.
That's interesting because I talk a lot about that too, as well, because a lot of hypnotherapists, especially psychologists, do not want to admit the impact that past life experiences can have on the present. So they kind of like tuck that away. But you notice that children can exhibit certain fears and phobias, and you're wondering, well, where did that come from? They're so young; they wouldn't have time to be socially conditioned to have those.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so but again, the modern psychotherapy field does not want to account for past life experiences. There's a reason for that. But can you talk too specifically about what you had mentioned about the woman speaking a different tongue, or is this a type of possession, or is this a type of going in and accessing that alternate life?
So I believe with hypnosis, what we're doing is we're slowing the brain waves down. And when we can do that, we can tap into the quantum field or to the unseen or to the spirit realm. That's why it's called quantum healing, is because we're not nailed down to a specific time. We're looking at just with all of the information available, what is happening. So, and I'm sorry, I forgot your specific question. I literally lost it that quickly. I
No, I
apologize.
was saying that the specific case that you brought up about the woman talking with a
Yeah.
different voice and all that, is that a type of possession, or are you really accessing a previous life that she had?
I think it's a previous life. I think that we have access to that information. With the subconscious, we have access to, that's where we keep our memories. That's where we keep our beliefs. And so I believe that, yes, you're going back to a previous memory. And they say that, I think when you talk about some therapists don't want to bring these things up because sometimes people feel that they're going to have, it's like a re-trauma or they're going to experience that again and kind of open up something. But there's a lot of proof that says is that when someone can review a traumatic experience in a way that they feel safe, and I always when I take my clients to these experiences or when I guide them there, I always tell them they can observe it. They don't have to re-experience anything. So if we can review those things, we can generally get a different perspective and we can see things clear because sometimes we may hold a belief about something that we may not even have the true facts of what happened. We may just have a story. So when we can review it and we feel safe and we're guided, then we can come out of that without being re-traumatized. We can actually feel more peaceful around it and we can let that go.
That's one of the things I do myself in my hypnosis sessions. Is when I take them deep into the subconscious mind, I tell them that they're always safe. And you're right, they're just observing because one of the things that we were taught when I was in priesthood is that, especially, for example, we were taught how to deal with rape victims, is that you don't want them to re-experience that trauma. It could be really, really bad situation, you know what I mean? So there's specific ways to deal with that. Let me ask you a question, this is kind of jumping ahead. Do you find, because you had mentioned something interesting in terms of trauma, do you find that a lot of like African Americans have like that trauma that they carried over from slavery?
I find yes, and I find with women we've experienced a lot of violence. I've had past life memories of literally that situation where I was a slave and I was brave enough to try to get away. So I had created this plan to get away, and then I got caught. and I got beat and I was made an example of.
Oh,
So it basically that carried over for me in a way that it's like, even with that courageousness that no one else had in that scenario, I was courageous, but it backfired. So that was something really deeply that I had to personally work through. So yes, we have a lot of that, and they say we carry about 7 generations of even ancestral trauma in our DNA. So this is something that we're not only carrying our stuff, we're carrying the stuff of our ancestors too.
no, wow. That is interesting. Like, I know, like, just for me, I've taken stock and written down all the things that I know have come from the past life. Because I did a lot of research into who I was, and I correlated that. Like, for example, I correlated my phobias to the person who I was in the past life, and saw how they how it originated. Like, let me give you a concrete example. Like, I have a phobia of like cigarettes and tobacco. I freak out if I'm near that, right? And I come to find out that my past life, I was a tobacco farmer. So that was very interesting to find that out. You know what I mean? So you can actually kind of see and experience that. So let's talk a little bit about your services, like what people come to you for.
I work with people with addictions, sexual addictions, cigarette addictions, people who have been rape victims, molestation, people that have had traumatic deaths, like, a woman who her mom died when she was around 7 or 8. So really I've dealt with so many different examples of things or different scenarios of things. And I find that people, we want to heal, and we do many different things to heal. We go to therapy, which has its place. I think it has limitations, but it has its place to be able to talk through things. But some of these things are so ingrained in us, and it's in the subconscious mind, and the talking is only going to get us to a certain point. So for example, the conscious mind is like the gatekeeper. So if someone is, approached with new information that could be helpful and it doesn't match their beliefs, so for someone who knows I shouldn't smoke, it's not helpful for me. So, but they're in their subconscious mind, there's some sort of shame they're attached to, or there's some sort of pain or something. So it's like, even though they know that it's not healthy for them, there's still something so ingrained and so embedded in them that they have difficulty releasing that. So, I have to deal with people with, relationship challenges, people with confidence challenges, people with fear, public speaking. I mean, it can go from something that would be maybe considered more superficial, more of about advancement and success. And then on the other end of the spectrum, trauma and deep violence and that type of thing.
Wow. Let me ask you this, because that's interesting you brought up the traditional therapy, because I tell people that even though I am, what do you would call someone they can come to for help, I have my own personal coaches. So I do have a therapist who I do talk to. I do have a hypnotherapist who I do work with, who also train me. So even though I'm a teacher, I still am studying, and I always study. I continue my studies. And I forgot my question. What the heck was I going to say?
I have the same.
Yeah, I remember now. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the traditional, like, Freudian technique of basically? And it was interesting. Years ago, I talked with a woman who's a psychologist, and we had to deal. We were both working with each other to help deal with death. A company had a death of an employee, and we were working to help the employees get over that. And I talked to her, and I realized that they're really steeped in that whole, I'm going to talk you through your problems, So what do you think about that versus really getting to get the heart of the matter through hypnosis? You said that both have their place, right?
I think it could feel great for someone to talk to a neutral party, someone that is unbiased, someone who can just listen. I think it's great to be able to get things off of your chest and to feel heard. But I also think that people get stuck in their story, and people can kind of set into that victim mentality. And it's like, instead of confronting some challenges, they are blaming their ex or they're blaming their mom. And these are all valid. We all have been victimized in some way. But I think that therapy can keep us in that pattern, that loop pattern of continuing to talk about something. And I think that after a while, I don't know if it's effective. I think initially it can be, but I think that's just to kind of get people to open up, and then I think they're ready for something more in many cases.
That's a good point. I like that. That's a good point. You know, it was very interesting. When I started out, I had an injury and I had to have surgery. And after surgery, they wanted me to go to therapy. And and I didn't know anything about the traditional therapy. So I didn't know that you should find one you're comfortable with, but they all aren't made the same. And I'm talking to the woman, and I was telling her that I reached a point in life where I'm comfortable being by myself, I'm comfortable reading, and somehow she extrapolated from that I'm gay. I was livid, I was mad. So, okay, that's fine and dandy. I corrected her, but the weeks that followed, everything traced back to because I'm gay. I'm not coming out the closet. And I just like, all right, you are done. I was like, you are done. And then I moved over to another therapist who I found that she was just awesome. She was just awesome. And she was like, you're not gay. She was really just helping me work through it. But you're right. I felt that even though she was awesome, there was a point where it was like, okay, if I need to deal with, because she admitted there were some things that were at the core and that were cemented in my subconscious mind. So I said, at that point, I need to deal with something else to get it out, to purge it. You know what I mean? Because this dialogue is great. Now, what I noticed, and this is what was, how I learned, is that a lot of times women love to talk about their problems, not for a resolution or a solution, but for comfort, And men want a solution. You're like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? Whereas women, they want the bonding and the solution type of thing. And you're right, one can become caught up in that. You know what I mean? And I noticed, and I asked you this, have you noticed in treating African Americans that there's this distinct difference between treating, like, for example, white people?
Well, I think that there's just certain things that are, like, for example, I'm Puerto Rican, okay, and so if I look at, let's say, just people of color in general, right? We are taught that you should just pray about it.
Yeah,
you should just pray about it. Jesus is, give it to God, and be happy. Pat someone on the back and just send them on their way, and it's not that simple. And I think we're starting to come around. I think that we're starting to become more open to therapy, more open to alternative ways of healing. And I think that prayer has its place. I think that if you want to go to church or you have these, I think it has its place for whoever wants to take that route. I personally think that we have to be more accountable with our own mental well-being, and we are responsible for breaking certain patterns. And I think that talk therapy and just praying is still surface level.
Yeah. And in fact, I go from the perspective, because I research a lot of ancient cultures, right? And one of the things I see that, and especially I admire Japanese culture, right? And because my studies into religion and the occult started in Japanese black magic, right? But one of the things I noticed, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, it comes from Chinese culture too, it's called the Chinese poker face. And what I mean by that is they're taught not to emote emotionally, just to be at center and be at peace. And I feel it's, especially with the Japanese, it's very genuine. They're very centered at peace and they're at that Zen state. This is why I talk a lot about, especially with minority groups, that, the way we are today is that most of us, I shouldn't say minority groups, I'll say everybody in general, let me say that, is that we're not balanced, that we're living in society that wants to keep us sick and emotionally upset and stressed out. And I feel that one of the best ways to deal with this and to root out all of this is through hypnosis. But unfortunately, I think there has been a stigma attached to hypnosis as parlor tricks and things of that nature. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of stigma. People think that hypnosis is like mind control. Like they think they watch the movie like Get Out, and they think that, like, you're going to come in and you're going to implant these ideas. Really, hypnosis is just about quieting the mind and having it focused. Because right now we're going through the day, we're worried about bills or our children or work. And we don't really have most of us don't have that time where we decompress and we allow ourselves to be in a more meditative state. And when you talk about, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, our Western society is very left brain, logical, analytical, and it has its place. Certain indigenous communities, they're more right brain, intuition, feeling and being. And I think that we're coming to a point where we're merging them. There's a time to be logical, there's a time to be analytical, but then there's a time to be in a more knowing and intuitive state. And hypnosis is basically taking you to that intuitive state, the subconscious. So I think that we're not buying into that anymore. We know that we can't outthink our way out of trauma.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what, if you watch the movies, it's all about delivering a good speech, and that gets you out of everything. You know what I mean? It's like, I can talk you out of your problems and you'll be well at that point. You know what I mean? And we got to, that is like, even with Get Out, I was like, that's not how it works. Yeah, I was like, and I hate movies that do that, because then it really gets people afraid to come for therapy, afraid to deal with hypnosis, And I've heard that too, like, oh, am I going to be brainwashed? Or I'm like, and I said, well, I can't make you do anything you wouldn't want me to do. You know what I mean?
No.
But talk about the specifics in terms of quantum healing. What is it really? That area is so refined. What is it good for?
First of all, some people are just interested in past life. They want to understand that. So it could be used for that. Though, as a practitioner, I don't necessarily know exactly what's going to happen. Every session is, like I tell people, it's like a curveball. And my job is to be very present with people. So for example, when people come in, it's just us discussing. We're talking about some of the things that they want to get out of the session. So if, let's say, they want to grow in their career, they're feeling stuck. So we create this intention initially. We discuss what we're going to work on. And then the higher self, the subconscious mind, will just take us there. So it's almost like if people know about like shamanic journeying, or some psychedelic use, you're going into this altered state. And it's almost like I tell people, you're like a scientist and you're just reporting back what is happening. You're just, some people are very visual, they can see, some people hear, some people feel. So it really is about every client, we're going to be discussing what it is that they're working through. And quantum healing is a combination of different things. We use visualization, we use relaxation techniques. So, and also many of the practitioners, including myself, we bring in what we've learned as well: energy healing, energy clearing, sound healing. So my job as a practitioner is to prepare the body so that we can go into an altered state. So I'm using different techniques because some people are they're going to respond to different techniques more than the other people. So again, quantum healing can be used for addictions, for fears. Some people will just come in and say, there's something heavy on me. I don't know what it is. I feel like something is stopping me. So sometimes people won't even know. Like, I don't even know what I'm afraid of. I don't know what's stopping me. So some people are very specific when they come in, emotional stuff, all of that. But some people just don't understand. They just know that they feel like even something dark is over them or with them.
Wow, that's interesting. Can you talk about, because this is kind of big too, relationship healing?
I find that many of us want to blame our partner. We want to we don't want to look at ourselves, and we don't want to understand that we're also dancing with this partner. And so
yeah, I definitely understand. Like, I tell my wives, if they just do what I tell them to do, everything will be all right. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry.
That's for another time. We're not going to talk about that right now. Okay. But I mean, it's like with relationships, sometimes in a session, people will be ready to leave a relationship, right? And then when they're in the session, they will come across information that'll basically say, like, this needs to be worked through. Here are some things you can do. Or sometimes they'll come into it and they'll be able to understand why they've attracted this partner. and how they have seen this pattern over and over with just a different body. So it's like, oh, I'm going to leave this person, and then I'm going to take myself to the next relationship, and the same dynamic will occur. So it's the session is about understanding what your specific thing is. Is it you need to leave? Is it that you're not seeing the whole thing? Is there more work to do? Is it a contract? Is it karma? Like there's all of these different layers and all of these different scenarios that could be at play.
I like how you said that because we don't consider all of those things. It's always the other person's fault. You know what I mean? It's like, I think we have a hard time like reflecting and looking at ourselves, you know? But how does one do that? I mean, when you, because obviously it takes a certain amount of humbling to say, let me just look at myself and work on those things I know could be causing the problems in a relationship. How do you deal with clients like that? Like, how do you describe that?
So one of the reasons why I love hypnosis is because this is not about me giving my advice to anyone. So sometimes if let's say you just tell a friend like, hey, I think you should leave that person, it doesn't really matter. I mean, they're going to have some resistance to that, right? Because they're going to say, oh, you don't know everything, or you don't know how I feel. But when you're in an altered state and you're tapping into your own wisdom, you feel what you need to do. No one's telling you. So you're faced with your own truth, but the way that I think spirit or your higher self delivers it is in a way that is digestible. You're never gonna get information that is gonna hurt you or that is gonna be like blaming you. It's just gonna give you information so that you understand, and it's gonna do it in a way. Sometimes it's through symbols, sometimes it's through a feeling.
Oh,
So
wow.
your higher self is going to give you the information that you need in a way that you can receive it.
Wow.
So you can't argue when it's coming from something higher than you, or not even higher than you, but something that you know is of wisdom.
That's a good point. That's because in a sense you can also say it's coming from yourself, so you can't argue with yourself. You know what I mean? We have a really good question. Toha Haru asks, do you have multiple sessions when healing childhood trauma? And thank you both for this. Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you. So the way my sessions last about 4 to 5 hours each. And
Wow.
so it's what I call, it's like a self-care day. You know, I tell people when you come, make sure that this is like your primary focus for the day. So people who have repeat sessions generally can wait a month, 2 months, several months, because you're going to have the session and then there's going to be some homework. There's going to be a shift internally. There's going to be a shift energetically. And then what we do in the session is we find out what are our next steps? What do I need to work on now? And I always tell my clients, you're going out into the same world with a new set of eyes. You can see things differently now. So now take this information that you've learned in this session, integrate what has changed in your heart and in your energetic body, implement it. So take some time to work through it. And then if you feel like you need another, you know how there's always that next layer, but sometimes things can be shifted. Like I tell people when they come in, expect a miracle, but don't attach yourself to it. Because I don't know, like I can't tell anyone, oh, you have one session, we're done. But it can happen. I've had people that have released sexual addictions in one session, right? So I'm always going for the miracle. I'm always going for the shift immediately, but knowing that I don't know what the higher order is. I don't know, maybe this person needs to experience something else for true healing. So I always tell people, you come in for your session, do the integration work. You'll intuitively know if and when you need another session.
Oh, wow. Let's, Hawkeye, who's this? Joe Mo has a really good saying, a really good comment. Notice Lynette Ramos spelled nectar. So if you mix the letters, it's spelled nectar God. So that's interesting.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, right? That's kind of cool. One of the things I noticed, and maybe you can speak to this, when I was touring the country with one of my films, I noticed that the films at the festivals were all about relationship dysfunction and trying to have men and women come together. And then I was talking to somebody, and I said, yeah, I don't know why when you go to these Black film festivals, it's all the films. They were not about science fiction. They were not about like comedy. It was always about dysfunctional relationships. And she said that that's one of the main problems in the African American community. How do you heal a collective problem like that? You know?
That's a big one. I mean, I think that varies per person, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it's about understanding. Like, I think most of us want that companionship. We want to be seen. We want to feel connected. And I think that's a big part of our experience here. And yet I think that we have to remember, why are we here? We have to look at ourselves. What is my specific contract or purpose for being here? And we need to allow our relationships to play a part without being so narrow-mindedly focused on it.
Yeah.
I see people who will throw away, I don't want to say throw away careers, but impact their careers, their money, their well-being for a relationship. And I think that, because there's something in us that is not whole. We're not loving ourselves somewhere if
Yeah.
we're so identified and addicted to someone else. There's something else going on.
Wow, that's deep. Yeah. And that I talk a lot about that too, because when I look at ancient cultures and how they dealt with mental illness, it was always in filling the void. It's like we understand that there is a need that people have, and if you fill that need, it makes them whole, it makes them balanced. Whereas Western society always tries to assign blame or you're not right mentally. Just it's not about helping you and working with you to get to a place. Case in point, we see that there was a crack epidemic in the African American community. Now that we have an opioid epidemic, we're more sympathizing to the victims because they're white and have this, addiction to opioids. But the thing is, I used to, one of the things is my brother had a drug addiction problem, and I never understood how powerful it could be, to be attached to those drugs. And when I started to really study and understand it, what I began to realize is that these are normal people who've gone through stress, and the addiction also is what it's doing. It's filling a void for them, and it's not something that's good or it's not a permanent fix, but it just complicates things more and adds on top of the problems. You know what I mean? And I think as a society, we have to get to a point where we start to understand that there needs to be a holistic view, a holistic balance of things, and that's what we're missing. Um, Western society tends to compartmentalize things and sees no connection between things. You know what I mean? So if you have, let's say, for example, you were speaking about a sexual addiction, right? Well, when you look at TV, and I was just looking at this young girl, I forgot her name, but she keeps coming up on my YouTube. I don't know why. But you have Cardi B, all these other girls come out flaunting their bodies. And when you expect men see this and they get like, programmed, in a way. And so it becomes this addiction, and society doesn't want to be held responsible for this. The media doesn't want to be held responsible for this. So we place the blame on the person. The blame is always on the person. It's their fault, no matter how they got into the situation that they're in. Now, can you talk about, have you ever gone, or has Dolores Cannon done any work with projecting into the future?
Yes, I actually work with clients that way. So like say like the thing that comes to my head is I had a client who she was in a job, she wanted to leave, which obviously she wanted to make sure she was, smart about transitioning, and she wanted to write more, and she had these ideas around what she wanted to do. So what we did in the session is we connected her with her future self. So let's connect you with a person, the aspect of yourself that has already done what you've done or what you want to do, right? Because if we talk about time, and we talk about time is always now, so that version of you is already in existence. And then what we do is let's ask her for advice. Let's ask that person who has already done what you want to do and have her give you some advice. That woman ended up leaving her job. She's doing more writing. She's writing blogs. So she's been able to already moved into. She's already closer to that aspect of herself than she was before. So it's like we're like bringing them in, and we're kind of trying to find that point where those two energies can meet, or those two aspects of ourselves can meet.
I love that. Has you or Dolores gone any further though? Now let's talk about like what's happening in the year 3000 or something like that. You know.
Yeah. So Dolores she's been able, she's done, I mean, she did thousands and thousands of these regressions. So yes, they were able to see certain patterns and what the potential realities were, or the potential outcomes, you know? So it's basically, you know, we know that one small thing can change the course of something. So when someone is giving a reading or you're looking into the future, it's just a potential. But yes, you can go into the future, you can see. I personally, just because I think the people that are attracted to my work, it is about the future, but it's more about resolving what is in the now that is preventing you from moving more into the future.
Mm.
So there are ways to tap into it, but it's not necessarily for exploration only, you know, if that makes sense.
Do you think we can get to a place where we're balanced people? Or do you find that most people have just so many layers of trauma or dysfunction that it's just going to be very difficult to get us to a place where we're actually balanced?
Yeah. I think there has to be a time where you are in a state of gratitude as much as you can for whatever's happening. Because, you know, I've done plenty of hypnosis work. I've worked with ayahuasca. I've worked with psilocybin. I've worked with San Pedro. I've worked with psychedelics. So I've done a lot around my own healing. I still get up in the morning sometimes and feel disconnected or feel sad, right? So these are things, it's the human experience. We have to know that there's going to be this fluctuation. There are going to be times when we're in bliss and feel connected and feel, you know, aligned. And then there's going to be times where you're going to feel fatigued and tired, and you're going to be, you know, I'm tired of being strong, or I'm tired. So I think it's really about just following and just doing the best that you can. But I do think, you know, for me, I've done a lot of work, and I'm a lot better than what I used to be. Right. So I'm not perfect. I've still got some work to do. I'm still trying to be in a state of gratitude as much as I can. But this is the work. This is the practice. But I do think we can get to a point where we're functioning at a higher level of consciousness, because I think right now we're so sick in so many different ways and so disconnected.
All right. I love the way you said that, because I talked to people and I said, we're not where we should be. You know what I mean? Because I'm always like me. There was a point in my life where I was really striving hard to be a Sarah, and I was very hard on myself. And I said, well, you got to give yourself time. You know, I'm coming from, and I always tell people, I'm honest about myself. I'm coming from meta trauma. I've had a lot of trauma in my past, and I bring that in relationships. But the thing about it is, like, I always work on it. You know what I mean? I'm not one to just let things take their course. Now, what I'd like to do is show you something, because I'm going to. This is a bit surprised. I didn't prepare you for this.
Okay.
We're going to watch something, and
Okay.
it's going to be very pertinent to what we're discussing in terms of mental illness. And I want to get your take on this. Okay.
Okay.
Your professional take on this. So let me share my screen, and we'll watch this together with the Magi's in the chat room. So give me 1 second as I get this tuned up, and let's watch.
Please stop bothering my kid.
Arthur, I have some bad news for you. This is the last time you'll be meeting.
You don't listen, dear. You just ask the same questions every week. How's your job? Are you having any negative thoughts? All I have are negative thoughts. When I was a little boy and told people I was going to be a comedian, everyone laughed at me. Well, no one's laughing now. You can say that again, pal.
It's so awful, isn't it?
For my whole life, I didn't know if I even really existed. But I do. People are starting to notice.
Think this is funny? Is it a joke to you?
Everybody, one small thing. Yeah, when you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker? Send in the clown.
Now, I think that this movie is coming at a great time. You know what I mean? Where it's a character study. It's a character study of a man goes into darkness. He's picked on by society, and he loses it mentally. You know what I mean? And I just love that we're actually recognizing the fact that the stress level of what's going on in society has an impact on people. Is there any like way you can discuss like how do we safeguard against like because we go through lots of stress, working lots of hours. You know what I mean? People encounter racism every day. People encounter sexism every day. How do you safeguard against that and just become a well balanced person? You know, and not become a joker. You know.
I think we all have to find a way to disconnect from our external reality. We have, people talk about meditation or yoga or writing or exercise, and everyone's different on what's resonant with them. But first of all, I think every day or as much as we can, we have to just find our center because we talked about prayer at the beginning. And they say prayer has its place, and then meditation is to receive the answer to that prayer. So if we're never in that space where we can receive or we can be in flow, then we're going to just get lost in the external reality. So I think we have to start to come back to ourselves and figure out how can we begin to imprint our reality? How can we begin to create our own reality regardless of what's going on? Because depending upon who you talk to, some people are having a kind of a more peaceful experience. Things are going great. Other people, they're not. So it's like the more that we can fine tune our energy, the more that we can fine tune our thoughts, our behaviors, who we interact with, the decisions that we make, we are going to begin to encounter and resonate with different situations. So we have to, again, be accountable for our own vibration so that the more that we do that, first of all, we can begin to not have certain experience, right? We won't see those things. But then also our vibration, we can start to resonate something different where more and more people are resonating at this higher level. So it has to start with us, and then we can begin to change the outside world. So if we all start doing that, if we all start going in and finding our way, what our way to healing is, then we can begin to impact the world and other people. So I think that everything begins with us.
Now, there's something else I want to talk about too, because the Joker is really a character study into those who've been disenfranchised from society, especially those I don't know if we want to call them terrorists or those individuals who've gone off and done mass shootings like churches and things of that nature. Do you think there's some of us who are open and more receptive to stress and trauma, while others may have a thicker skin for that? You know what I mean?
I do. I mean, I even think astrology has a big factor, like, who we are, how sensitive we are, how things impact us. A lot of us who have grown up in larger families, you know, could have very similar experiences with parents or parent or guardians, but have a different response to it. So I do think that we all react differently. And they say that trauma is not the experience, it's our connection to it. So if we experience trauma and we begin to disconnect, we feel disconnected from source, or we feel disconnected from other people, we feel misunderstood. So it's not necessarily what happens, it's the way that we interpret it, it's the way that it kind of sits into our bodies and in our mind. So yeah, I think we all respond differently. And I think that many of us now, we no one wants to appear like they're falling apart. No one see, everyone wants to feel like they have all their shit together. Excuse me if I'm not supposed to say that, but we are broken. We didn't, most of us have been broken, or most of us have dealt with things that are very difficult, and we need to try our best to be more vulnerable. It doesn't mean you fall apart in front of every person, right? Because you have to trust, but we have to be really honest with ourselves. Like, it is okay to feel challenged. It is okay to feel broken. It's just a matter of what can I do? And to begin to try some of these things and begin to make those small changes. It's not going to happen overnight. And sometimes we want that easy fix. And if it's not easy and it's not fast, we don't want to, healing can be messy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I had a woman who emailed and said every time that she goes to see a therapist, she feels, like really like discombobulated in a way. And I said, that's because you're relaying personal stuff and you're going through all this, the trauma with the therapist. So that's going to get you that's going to make you feel a sense of uneasiness, but that's just part of the process. It'll taper off. So just stick with it, One of the things too, that when you're dealing with something like this in terms of going into the subconscious mind, tell me a little bit about how do you disengage in that state from the trauma itself, from the event itself. What's like, just give us an insight as to how that's kind of done,
So I'm going to give you an example. Let me know if I'm answering your question. I had a client who was almost right at the beginning of the session. Her grandmother that passed away was there with her. And we asked her grandmother, do you want to come along on this journey with us? And her grandmother said yes. And her grandmother was there, kind of just there. She could feel her presence. She knew she was there. And there was this point in the session where it got really cloudy. It was like kind of dark. And she didn't know what was happening. She's like, I don't know what's happening, but I can't really see. Mm-hmm. And her grandmother was like, don't go over there. Don't go. Her grandmother was warning her. Okay. And then I said, well, we appreciate your grandmother being here. I want you to use your own intuition. And I want you to decide for yourself whether or not you should continue or whether we need to go in a different direction. And she's like, I need to go. As soon as she said that, it cleared up and she was able to see the time that she got raped and beat. She saw the people there. She saw herself there. And when she was able to just see it replay, okay, and there was no story. This was a random act. This wasn't like there was a reason or any sort of karmic connection or contract. All she was able to do was see it. And somehow just her reviewing it, because think about a situation like that. No one wants to think about that. You push it away. But what I like to do in my work is all of the things you pushed away, I'm going to invite them in. Let's bring them in. Because the more we push them away, the more it's like a boogeyman that we think if we just ignore it, it's going to go away. When in reality, it's actually going to just be sabotaging below your radar. It doesn't mean it's not there. It just means we're not addressing it. So my point is her reviewing that, she was able, and I don't remember all of the details of that specific scenario, but the point is her reviewing it, she received so much healing in that. And there were some other things in the session that came up. But the point is that even her grandmother was like, don't do it.
Wow.
But I always encourage people, you need to connect with your own intuition because you are the one that knows what you need. And so my point is that, again, if we can review these situations and we feel safe, and we can sometimes, in many cases, gain an understanding as to why, I had someone who he was going to get married, and he wanted to have a session because he had dealt with some sexual trauma, and he didn't want to pass that on to his children.
Yeah.
His father molested him his whole life. His father treated him like a slave. Okay. When he came to the session and I regressed him, he used to be a woman that was a prostitute that his own mother was pimping him out. Okay. So there was one specific abuser that was the main abuser that his mom would let this man come in and abuse her. But when we found out was that this man who was her main attacker was really a contract to try to have her come into her power. So he was the antagonist that was trying to push her so hard, but really he wasn't against her in the scheme of things.
Wow.
And he was not able to accomplish that in that life. So when he came to this life, what did he do? He attracted a father, or he chose a father that was going to perpetuate the same type of abuse, or very similar, until he was able to resolve and understand these patterns that were happening and address it, you see? So sometimes it's just, we have to be able to confront these things, but you have to feel safe. My job as a hypnotherapist, and I'm very scientific. I love the science behind it, but I also work with my ancestors. I work with my guides. I do all of that. And I create a container, and I tell people, this container here, you can fall apart in, but when you get up, you're going to be put back together. So you can feel like you can just fall apart. You can cry. You can do whatever you want, but trust that when it's over, you're going to feel more empowered. You're going to feel like more whole. You're not going to feel more traumatized or more afraid. So that's our job is as in this healing profession, is to create this safe container. And it's to bring in your team too, your ancestors, your guides, your angels, whatever it is you're connected with. And I always find out what people have a resonance with, because my job is not to impart my specific beliefs. My job is to connect you to your whatever it is you're working with, whatever your team is.
I like that.
I
like that term, team. I like that.
Yeah.
Did you watch the Botham case?
No.
Okay. There's a lot of stuff going on in mainstream media about how he was shot by a police officer mistakenly, and in the courtroom, everybody was forgiving Amber Geiger, just like forgive. And they were saying how, it's okay to forgive, but it was going overboard in terms of the hugging. And this is going to create a problem with the Christian church about really just, taking things too far. They were saying it's a psychological dysfunction that's come out of slavery, like Stockholm syndrome, where you have more of a love for the oppressor than you have a love for yourself. And this is why we saw so much forgiveness. Even if the judge was hugging the convicted murderer. It's like, which is a little bit inappropriate. But I didn't know if you had saw that or had a take on that as to, obviously there has something that's happened to the majority of African Americans to put them in this position to where they value the oppressor more than they value their own selves. And this is a condition that I've read a lot about in terms of low self-worth, low self-esteem. How do you deal with that?
So I have a personal situation. I'm not going to tell who it is, but this is my view. I have someone in my life who I feel has violated me, has disrespected me. Okay. So I can understand why, from a larger perspective, why this happened. This person had their own trauma. This person, they have their stuff that they brought it to me. So I tell people, some people get my universal love and some people get my personal love. I love that person. I wish that person well. I pray that they, receive the healing that they need, but it's not going to come from me. I'm not going to be the one. I don't have to expose myself because as a healer, I'm supposed to help you. You need to find that through someone else.
Yeah.
Maybe when we transition and we're going to be in the next realm, maybe we could shake hands. But right now, that's not. I don't want to do that, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like the rape victim hugging the rapist. It's kind of weird. You know, it's like, you know, I think the Christians have good tenets, but I think we're carrying it a bit too far.
I would agree with you.
Yeah. So talk about how we can contact you and what can we expect from the session and the whole 9 yards.
So on my website, which is LynetteRamos.com, I have there's a link that tells people how to prepare, right? So I tell people right as soon as you think you want a session, begin to affirm that you are going to receive the information that you need. Begin to affirm that you are connected with your higher self. So the work starts as soon as you make that intention. And a lot of people will get dreams and synchronicities and all that before they even come, because again, their team or their higher self already knows, okay, let's start working, right? Because this isn't just about me. I'm just a peg in the wheel, right? I'm amongst many things that can help people heal. So people, they have this kind of like, not protocol, but hey, here are some things to do to prepare. People come to the session with questions. I'm literally going to take a client's question and ask them their own questions when they're in this state of hypnosis. So you're your own oracle, okay?
Oh.
Yeah. So people come in, we have about an hour or two of just a conversation. I like to get a chance to know people. You know, what was your childhood like? What are your just so I have a good picture. People can get to know me if they have questions for me. I talk to them a little bit about the science behind hypnosis so that I can get their left brain on board and so they can understand how that's going to work. So we're just chatting. Then we take a break. And then there's about a 2-hour, that's where the hypnosis is. I have a bed, because what we want to do is we want to replicate right before you go to bed in the morning, right before you get up in the morning. So it's like when you lay down, your body already knows, oh, okay, it's time to go in. So you lay down, I record the session, we go through it again, it takes about 2 hours. And then when we're done, we have like we kind of go over it. What happened, you know, what stood out for you. I give my observations. And then I always tell people, when you go home, not today, but, you know, I usually send the recording in like a day or two, re-listen to it, because you know this as a healer, we have to continue to integrate that.
Oh, yes.
So it's like there was a case where they hooked up someone to a machine that would monitor their brain waves. This person, simply thinking about their session, went back into that healing state.
Oh.
So if we can review it, then we're going to be able to further integrate that. And I tell people, go back, because just like when you reread a book or you rewatch a movie, something may stick out at you that you don't remember or that hits you differently. You've done a couple things and all of a sudden you re-listen to the session and you're like, oh, okay, wow, that's something else I have to work on, or just it triggers something. So that's why I tell people you don't have to come back right away, because you've got some stuff to do. So again, it takes about 4 or 5 hours. And I saw someone ask a question about, how do I even sustain, like, how do I keep my energy up? First of all, in these sessions, when we're going through healing, because some clients I take to a healing place and our guides come in, I can feel it. So some sessions are very dense, very difficult. And some sessions are very high vibe, where I can feel the healing energy. I can feel it. So my job is to always use my breath, and I have certain techniques that I do so that every session is really about my rejuvenation. So I only do 1 session a day also.
Oh, yeah.
I only do one. And so, yeah, so, you know, if anyone has any questions, they can absolutely reach out to me. I do free consultations so that, you know, people can get a sense of whether quantum healing would be appropriate for their specific situation. And for people who think they cannot be hypnotized, some people do go in deeper than others, but that doesn't mean it's not effective. You know, most people, yeah.
Yeah, if you have clients that find it hard to go into hypnosis.
Yeah, like, and here's the thing, it's about what that person needs. So for example, I have some clients that have very mystical sessions. They're communicating with Jesus, or they're communicating with Kali, you know, but then other sessions are about trauma stored in the body that we're releasing. It's not mystical. It's really just what is needed. And so I try to set the expectation that not every session is mystical, because that may not be what you need. You may just need to cry, and we may need to get into that body and figure out where you're holding on to these traumas and release them. It's an emotional thing. So every session is different but perfect.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. So they should go directly to your website. They can sign up there for a session and all that.
Yes.
That is awesome. So I want to thank you for taking time. I know you have to go.
Yeah.
We went over the hour, I promise, but this is
We're good.
really good. So listen, thank you so much. We've benefited a lot in hearing about you and quantum healing. I think it's expanded people's knowledge about what hypnosis is and what it can be in the different areas or different disciplines of hypnosis. It's not all just one thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I hope that we further just dispelled some of these negative, stigmas attached to hypnosis, like, like the clock, watch the watch or whatever. It's not like that.
Yeah.
Really, it's a very helpful therapeutic thing if used in the right way. One last thing I just want to talk about to you before we go. Talk about like safety concerns. Can you make people do things they would normally do, or can you implant negative things to make them like, an agent?
If I were to try to implant something, right? If I try to implant a thought, there's a part of you, again, your higher self, your inner wisdom. If it does not align with that, you're not gonna retain it. And they even show that with certain hypnosis studies, that they may, like, with your stage hypnosis, they may convince someone, oh, okay, let's go rob a bank. And they're like, okay, yeah, let's go rob a bank. And then there's a point where you're just like, that's just silly. It's not something that I can't try to implant something that doesn't resonate with your core being. And in doing this work, I am so responsible. It's so sacred. It's so vulnerable, so personal, that I would deal with some really heavy karma if I were to try to do something that was not aligned with a person's highest good.
Great. So you hear that, people? You're not going to be a Manchurian candidate. You're not going to. Okay. So thank you again. I appreciate you stopping by. Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
So again, just if you guys want to contact her, visit her website. She has great service and it's very helpful. And as you know, I really feel like we all should be working with somebody to help us through our problems, because you just get to a point in life where you can't solve your own problems. And you shouldn't have to deal with your own hangups in isolation. You need camaraderie, you need comfort, you need people there to support you. And just having those people there, as you mentioned, team, knowing that you've got ancestors, you got friends, you got families that are there to support you and help you, can make a world of difference. So anyway, thank you all for the Magi's for coming in. And this is Kasant Ma'a Keparu, son of Ma'at and Tahuti. My aunt is the beautiful goddess Heheru. Until my next video, Amen Ra.